Hello to Pioneer viewers. As you know, our agenda is the Russia-Ukraine war and the latest developments on the front line. The war continues on the front line in all its reality, and the fighting seems to have intensified in certain areas in recent days. The lines that were set after Moscow's invasion attempt have begun to shift as the Ukrainian army has begun to counterattack. In times like this, what armies needs the most are soldiers with conviction and determination. Soldiers who do not believe in victory are unlikely to succeed on the front line. The moral and motivation of soldiers constitutes the fighting potential of an entire unit. The Russian army is going through very troubled times in terms of motivation of its soldiers. Russian soldiers are trying to overcome their depressive days with addiction. As a result, there are drunken soldiers' problems within the military unit. According to the news that emerged the other day, the Kremlin administration seems to be fed up with these problems. The Kremlin, which has deployed new methods to combat addiction problems, is quite cruel to its own soldiers. The Ukrainian army, on the other hand, seems to be quite successful in terms of the motivation. Ukrainian troops are fighting passionately on every front of the war. The Ukrainian army has some strategic priorities. One of them is the offensive against the Crimea region. Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky made statements about the Crimea region the other day. Shortly after Zelensky's statements, explosions were heard in Crimea. Those who heard the explosions were shaken with great violence. The Ukrainian army's security targets for Crimea are worrying the Russian soldiers in the region. Let's take a look at the Ukrainian army's Crimean targets and the brutal methods of the Russian army. Last day, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky made important statements about the ongoing conflict. During his remarks, Zelensky shared new developments in the Crimea region. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that Ukrainian military forces will soon have full fire control capabilities over Crimea. Hours after Zelensky's statements, explosions were reported near Sevastopol. Sevastopol Governor Mikhail Razvozhayev confirmed that explosions have occurred in the area. However, he did not specify whether the explosion was the result of an attack by Kiev's forces or a mistake by the Russian military. According to local sources, the Ukrainian army attacked a target in Crimea. Several sources claimed that it was an attack on the Belbek military airfield near Sevastopol. Considering the previous attacks of the Ukrainian army in the region, the possibility of the targets being military airport is strengthened. Crimea is recognized as Ukrainian territory by many countries, but Russia invaded and then annexed the peninsula in 2014. Since Russian President Vladimir Putin launched his war against Ukraine in February 2022, the Ukrainian military has launched regular attacks targeting Russian forces, and Zelensky has often vowed to take back Crimea. The Ukrainian leader spoke online the other day at the Crimean Platform's parliamentary summit. During this speech, Zelensky spoke about Russia's plans to move ships from the Black Sea Fleet. He said that there are plans to open a new naval base in Abkhazia to move the Russian Navy away from the Ukrainian missiles and naval vessels. The Ukrainian leader said that Kiev forces will soon have firepower and air dominance over the Crimea. Zelensky said, as of now, they have not achieved full fire control over Crimea and adjacent waters, and that the only thing of a matter of time before this goal is realized. Hours after Ukrainian President Zelensky's statements, loud explosion occurred in Crimea. After the explosions, many social media users shared posts and stated that they heard the sounds. The explosion near Sevastopol was heard even from the town of Bakhchia-Sarai, located about 37 miles from the region. The regional governor, Razvozhayev, downplayed the explosions and urged residents to remain calm. Razvozhayev also said that the other loud noises reported around the port city came from the military actions in the nearby Black Sea. The shock wave following the explosions damaged some buildings. Local sources claim that a military airfield in this area was hit. The tension that also emerged in the previous days seems to have spread to the Russian troops. Parts of the Russian troops in Crimea are anxiously waiting for the possible Ukrainian counterattack. The Ukrainian military's strategy for Crimea has been clear since the beginning of the occupation. Targets in Crimea are destroyed by missiles or drones. Missiles are being used to block the access roads connecting Crimea to the Russian mainland. As a result, the Russian army is struggling to build strong fortifications in Crimea. The Russian military's lack of combat motivation has also become a major problem for the Kremlin. Reports emerged the other day that the Moscow is intervening in the situation. New training grounds are being built for unruly and undisciplined soldiers in the Russian army. According to the information we have obtained, a new practice has been launched in the Russian training camps in the village of Prodboy in Volgograd region and Totskoy in the Urumburg region. According to the information obtained from local sources, the practice launched in these training camps is being implemented for undisciplined soldiers in the Russian troops. As the Russian army's lack of combat motivation grows, Moscow's solution seems to be quite controversial. A former Russian soldier who identified himself as Sergei said in statements that the Russian army tortures Russian soldiers in the military training camps in the region. It was stated that soldiers in the Russian army who had problems with drunkenness and addiction were sent to the region and subjected to the severe punishments. Sergei said he reportedly tried to leave the army and refused to fight in Ukraine but faced threats from the leadership. He said that he received threats from his commanders that he would be beaten by the military police. He said that he was also threatened that he would be put in a pit without food and water. Some of the rebel soldiers were kept in the pits for several days or a week with transportation. He said that they were denied medical care and that one person died on a pit grounds after being detained in this pit. Sergei noted that the soldiers sent to this pit continued calmly after their return and were afraid of everything. It is reported that within the Russian army, soldiers who defy commanders and criticize the administration are subjected to great violence. This is confirmed by local sources and statements of former Russian soldiers. As we mentioned in the previous days, soldiers in the Russian army are going through hard times both physically and psychologically. For this reason, the number of deserters is also on this rise. Moscow's methods of dealing with the problems are also causing great controversy. The Russian army, which used ruthless methods against its own soldiers, remains quite weak in the conflict against Ukraine. Do you think Crimea could be the next target for the Ukrainian army? How do you interpret the Ukrainian attacks on Crimea? How do you evaluate the Russian army's treatments for unruly soldiers? How do you think Moscow's policy of violence affects the morale of its own soldiers? What do you think about the Ukrainian leader Zelensky's statements? If you care about your opinion, please share it with us.